Hi, I'm Ashley Marie, and today I'm going to make one of my very favorite cakes for you, and that is my carved pumpkin cake. Now, I first made this cake 9 years ago. It was the very first cake I ever carved, the very first cake I ever airbrushed, so it has a special place in my heart. I enjoy recreating it every year, and it always looks a little bit different every time. Pumpkins are great because they all look different, so you can kind of make it look however you want, totally personalize it. It's always a huge hit. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my other fall treats and Halloween spooky desserts coming up and comfort foods. You guys seriously have so much planned, you're not gonna wanna miss it. Let's get started. I made a double batch of my chocolate cake so that I have a really tall 8-inch cake. This is 8 inches by 5 inches tall. Now I baked mine in 2 3-inch tall pans, but you can make whatever configuration that you want. That's the great thing about this cake. There is no rule or rhyme or reason. So then you want to freeze your cake. I prefer carving partially frozen cakes. I feel like I get a lot more detail that way and I don't get as many crumbs. You want to make some ganache. Now ganache acts like a glue because it sets and then holds it in place, where like some kind of filling like a pastry cream, of course, would just slide around, and we want this to hold. So first thing we're gonna do is to glue our 2 8-inch layers together. Once you have glued those together with the ganache, they shouldn't move. They should be nice and stable so that we can go ahead and go to cutting these. Now we're gonna start carving. So the very first thing that you wanna do is to carve a wedge. Now this wedge doesn't have to be very deep, and because we're going to continue to cut away at this. So then just cut another wedge a couple inches away from that. Now in nature, things often tend to be on odd numbers, 3, 5, 7s. So I'm looking for this pumpkin to have 5 little bubbles around it, if you will. So I'm making 5 different wedges to be that area inside the bubbles. So go ahead and cut out 5 wedges. They do not have to be the same distance apart. I actually like for my pumpkin to be a little bit odd shaped and not perfect. You want to come in and cut that area between the wedge and the outside of the cake to soften those corners up, and do that all the way around on both sides. Now, of course, this is looking very cylindrical, so we need to bring those rounded edges up into the top. So now we're going to cut away at about a 45-degree angle around the top of the cake, from the inside of the wedges along to the outside of that bubble. And just like before, now we're going to soften that 45-degree angle and the side to bring it more of a soft shape. Now before we go any further, we're gonna flip this over and take care of the bottom of the bubbles. So I have this 4-inch circle covered in foil that we're going to glue to the bottom of our cake with the ganache frosting. This is the base of our cake. And now we're gonna do the same thing we did before, cutting away that angled, just making sure not to cut past that 4-inch mark, because we need this cake to have a stable kind of base. If that gets too small, the cake tends to get too wobbly. So continue to cut away and continue to make this soft look to your cakes. Once you're happy with it, flip it back over. Pumpkins don't just have a flat top. They can come up and around and over and then back down inside. So what now we're gonna do is cut an upside down cone shape out of the center of our cake. And now we're gonna bring these edges in to match that cone to come into the center as well. And don't forget, don't just cut the edges inside. You also want to make sure that bubble kind of cups up and around as well. So cut a little bit of that bubbled top down towards that center angle as well. All right, now I am more or less happy with the shape of my pumpkin. Now it's time to go in before we frost it and make sure we're really happy with all the edges. Like right here, there's a little bit of a corner. I'm just gonna kind of shave that off a little bit. This is the time for kind of a little bit of last minute detail work, but don't go too crazy because we have so many layers on top of this that a little imperfection isn't gonna matter too much. We wanna clean up all of these cake shards and all of the crumbs. You do not wanna start frosting a cake when there's crumbs all over the counter and all over the turntable. Now you want to frost it. All right, so you can see this is totally set now. We're gonna turn it upside down and now frost the bottom. There's a couple reasons I like to use ganache. One, once it sets, it's set. It's really great. Unlike buttercream, when I put the fondant on this, it's gonna hold all of the details that I've created and not gonna go bleh and blub everywhere. Another reason is that once it sets, if there's an area, like right here, it's a little bit spiky, this is chocolate. If I rub my hand over it enough times, my hand is gonna warm up the chocolate and it's gonna kind of melt a little bit, and I can soften any edge that maybe wasn't exactly right before I put the fondant on here. Now, again, fondant is pretty thick. We don't have to do this excessively. You don't have to make it perfect, but it is nice for maybe like right here, this kind of a big chunk. It is nice for areas where, you know, it's sticking out just a little bit much. Just take 5 seconds to rub my hand over it and smooth it out. So roll out some fondant about 1/4 inch thick and lay it on your cake. Now, working quickly while the fondant is nice and pliable and soft. First, we want to get it into these, the nooks and crannies, and then we want to bring it down the side without getting wrinkles. One of the great things to do with fondant is to find something that's strong, kind of heavy and sturdy. It isn't going to be all wobbly. That's a little bit smaller than your cake base. So this is smaller than a 4-inch circle. So I'm going to put that there and move my cake onto it. And what that's going to allow me to do is to kind of work past where that flat surface wouldn't let me work. So I can work my way around the base of the pumpkin and underneath it. One of the things I've started doing is placing my cake upside down to help me get around to the base nicely. Now that I have all that extra gone, I can start pressing all of this to keep it nice and smooth without getting too big of wrinkles or creases anywhere. And holding the knife so it's parallel to that cake plate, I'm going to cut away all of the extra so I have a nice flat surface. So we flipped it back over, and as you can see, we do have some flat spots that we're going to have to work our way around now. So first thing I'm going to do is just kind of soften and round out anything where it might be flat. You can use your fingers or the palm of your hands for this. Now you want to make sure your hands are clean, no chocolate ganache from flipping the cake over, and that they're dry, no water. Water will just stick to the cake. Now we want to bring more details into our creases. So I'm going to start with this small ball tool, and I'm going to bring it up through the creases, making sure not to accidentally catch the fondant and pull it, but to actually be pressing the fondant further into the cake. I'm going to move to the next smaller one, another even smaller one. I'm going to bring in my thumbs or my pinkies, whichever will kind of fit into those creases, and soften that again. Now to add some greater depth to this pumpkin, I'm going to take all of these areas and just kind of add some more little indents to the bulges that they have. Not super deep. So I kind of started with the big one and do a little bit of an indent with a slightly smaller one. All right, we are almost done with this. Now I'm just going to take this same tool and kind of add a couple of just short ones that don't quite extend past the top. All right, now you can add your stem and leave your cake just like this, a nice bright orange pumpkin. Nothing wrong with that. But to make it look a little bit more realistic, we're going to continue moving on, and we're going to add some airbrushing effects to this. So I have my airbrush and I have some orange. Now it might seem silly to add orange on top of orange. I get that. But this orange is actually just a little bit darker and is going to add different depth with airbrushing. The closer you are to your cake, the more detailed your line will be. The farther away you are, the bigger surface it's going to cover. Also, the more you pull the plunger back, the more paint is going to come out. So when you're really close and you're doing those detailed thinner lines, you don't want to pull the plunger back all the way. So I'm going to start by going down each of my creases. So I'm going to hold the plunger down part way and keep it about 3 inches away so it kind of gets a nice spray. As you can see, I got some shadowing look to that. And I have this back on my thinner base so I can come from the bottom and kind of do the same thing. I'm going to do that all the way around. Now I'm going to come a little closer and I'm going to go into those little smaller nooks that we created with a lighter touch. Now I'm going to come from a little bit further away and kind of do, again, a light touch and just kind of give it a little bit more. I'm going to go around the bottom. All right, once we're done with our orange, we're going to do some brown. Now, I really love what the brown does, but it is brown, it is dark, and there is no covering this up once it's on. So very light touch. You can always add more. You can't take it away. So I'm going to start at the center. I'm going to be pretty close and barely pull the plunger back. just to give it that little bit of depth. And kind of pull back off the plunger as I get a little bit further down. So now you see the depth that those darker shades have given us. And I'm gonna go back over once more with the orange, and that will kind of mute some of the brown in some places, just slightly. Now take a ball of green fondant and kind of roll it into a cylinder of sorts and flatten both sides. This is going to be our stem. Now, to make it match our pumpkin better, we're gonna take one side and pinch off 5 little points. We're gonna make this side also a little bit fatter. And once you're happy that the points are matching up, you can press that down into place. Then taking a handful of toothpicks, I'm gonna come in here and pound away at the top of this to give it that cut and then shrunken look that the top of pumpkins get. Now we're gonna turn our airbrush on again. With really light touches, we're just gonna kind of go up the stem. And we're all finished. I think you can see why this is one of my favorite cakes and why I make it every fall. Now this cake uses a couple different techniques: carving, frosting, fondant, and airbrushing, but it's a pretty quick cake to whip up, and you can have so much fun with it, and you can make it so unique. I use this as a centerpiece for Thanksgiving. I've also cut little faces into it and used it as a centerpiece for Halloween, as a jack-o'-lantern. A couple weeks ago, I had some guests. The Men Try videos came over, and you can see the video right here, and they made this cake with me. Now, they were expecting their cakes to be epic fails. They were totally prepared to laugh about what a terrible job they did at the end of the day, but they surprised even themselves. Like I'm always saying, nothing is too hard with the right tips and tricks, and the boys did a fantastic job. They were so proud of their cakes at the end. I was proud of their cakes at the end, so don't forget to check out that video. It should be hilarious. Now, I want you to make this cake, and I want to see it. So don't forget to tag me on social media. Let me know how it goes. The links to all my social media are down below. I'm pretty much on everything. Leave me a comment letting me know what your favorite dessert to make is for Thanksgiving, Halloween, fall. I love fall. It's my favorite time of year. I have so many comfort foods and Halloween treats and Thanksgiving foods all planned out for you. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything. And thanks for watching.